I was divorced for 10 years, didn't believe in marriage anymore, didn't believe that it could be good, didn't believe that people could thrive in it, that there was true friendship, true love, didn't even think that existed anymore, because what I was shown through divorce and what I personally experienced through divorce was hopelessness. And I just thought I was gonna do life alone forever, and I was okay with that because marriage just meant destruction and pain. It didn't mean happy, it didn't mean joy, it didn't mean love. So I was pretty okay with, I'm gonna do this by myself, because I just didn't believe in that anymore, but I believed I could do this on my own. That was a pretty long 10 years. It really wild because life was good, but I still walked with hopelessness in my heart. And I'm pretty sure others could see that to some degree. But as I continued in my journey as a single and going to be single, the Lord had another plan. I moved to Texas and was offered an opportunity to work in a company that truly believes in marriage and not only shows that marriage is good, but helps those get there. And slowly but surely, my hardened heart started to soften, and I started to believe in marriage again. I didn't know that was going to be for me. It kind of still came as a surprise when it happened, but God had a bigger plan than I even imagined, and He gave me hope again. He showed me that marriage could be fun. It could be unity, it could be love, it could be joy. You truly could have your person to walk hand in hand with forever, and I get to walk in that now.
Our heart is to transform relationships and to see marriages thrive the way God has called them to thrive. And so I believe that He's uniquely positioned XO Marriage to meet couples where they're at in their marriage journey, because I think the most important relationship out there that God designed is the marriage. And as the marriage goes, so goes the family. Because we're not just wanting to invest in the here and now, we're wanting to invest in the generation of marriages. That if they have a healthy marriage, that's going to feed and bleed into their kids potentially having a healthy marriage and their grandkids, and that there's a testimony for that at all seasons of the relationship, that we're never at a point where we're done. So whether you're in your 20s or in your 60s, God still is a dynamic worker in relationships, and we want to be a part of helping couples experience that generational shift that I think we can experience again, and that XO Marriage is going to be at the forefront of that.
So the resources we have here at XO Marriage are amazing. They work for couples that we see all the time, but they're tried and true, and I believe the real reason they work is because they're biblical. God is the one who is the foundation of all of the resources we have here, and if we do life, if we do marriage His way, through His word and His truth, we will succeed in all that we do, and that's what we strive for here at XO Marriage, is to really have that foundation built on God's word and His truth.
One of my favorite things about what we do at XO Marriage is that we help couples discover why their way isn't working, and that God's way does work. And I mean, there are specific instances in the last year in just working with couples in different places and their relationship and settings and issues that they're discovering and having those aha moments of like, wow, no wonder we're so out of alignment. And then in that discovery, I think there's a motivation to recognize like, this can look different. And that's how we help relationships succeed here at XO Marriage. Hi, welcome to XO Marriage. My name is Brandon White, and this is Heidi. She'll introduce herself here in a second. We are excited to just come and talk to you about family dynamics and the holidays, and specifically the topic of finances, because we know that can be a big sort of issue to walk through and combining those two together. So just want to introduce myself, and like I said, I'm Brandon. I'm on staff here at XO Marriage. I'm also a marriage coach, and so I've had the privilege of working with couples for the last 14 years in just various situations that they experience and walk through, and all of us have issues at different times. It's not if but when that we get to walk through those, and so that's just something God has put as a passion and heart in me, just to come alongside couples in whatever stage they're in, whether it's preventative interaction with them or it's just crisis in their relationship. So I'm married with 4 kids, live in Branson, Missouri. So that's a quick little snapshot of my world. And so Heidi, why don't you give us a little taste of your life?
Oh gosh, I don't know if you're ready for that. Like Brandon said, my name is Heidi, and I too am on the team here at XO Marriage. And like Brandon, I am one of the marriage coaches here as well. And my husband is also a certified marriage coach here with XO Marriage. So a lot of times we work together. And we've been working in the marriage space for about 7 years now. And like Brandon, have a passion just to make sure marriages are thriving. When they get off and out of alignment, how to show them how to do it God's way. And we are a blended family, so Kenny and I have been together for 21 years now. We have 5 children between the 2 of us and just had our 8th grandbaby. So that probably is a hint of what season of life we're in, but we are in the empty nest. No plants, no animals, no children, nothing that we can kill or need to feed. So that's always good. So we have lots of time to enjoy each other right now.
Awesome. Well, to jump into our topic, have you ever had an issue or challenges with holidays in your adult life, just in that dynamic? And
Oh, yes. Well, I hate to say that it's a blessing on one hand, but when Kenny and I got married, I think one of the first questions I asked him was, tell me about your family. What's that like? And after we got to know each other a little bit, his statement was, well, my parents are both dead, and 3 of my sisters believe something different about Christmas. And so I was like, great, we don't have to have any fights at Christmas time or the holidays because it's going to always be my way. And so it was kind of an interesting dynamic, but Kenny has a lot of kind of past injury in his life around Christmas, so he is not a fan of the holidays. And I grew up loving the holidays. So that was something we had to work with and cause conflict for sure in our marriage.
Yeah, and when you mention the word holidays, like that can create, excitement and joy and very positive memories and feelings for others. It can create a lot of heartache and pain when you think about those situations. And so just to honor and respect that, we know not everyone fits in one sort of box of when you say that word and the dynamics. And sometimes those things are like residing inside of us, but it sort of intensifies when you come to the holidays. Like maybe typically you can manage things and keep them under wrap. But then I don't know what it is about holidays, but sometimes the crazy comes out in couples in that reality. And that's a lot of times where I've had the privilege and opportunity to work with couples during that time, because it just provokes, especially family dynamics, like how are we going to navigate extended family, and what does that look like? Which then exposes the understanding of like what's in our relational tool belt to be able to navigate that time and situation in a healthy way, whether that's in the marriage and talking through things or an extended family. And so one of the things that we want to talk about are like, what are healthy boundaries within the holiday season? And so we're just wanting to give some quick pointers. Obviously, we're not going to be able to touch on every topic and what that looks like moving forward, Heidi, but I do think it's important to understand one of the big things that my wife, Amy, helped me think about, because I just came from a family where, and I'm using this not in a neutral term, not healthy or unhealthy, but probably a more enmeshed family system, where she came more like, no, we are a family within a family. And so I had to sort of learn and understand that, because I knew how to navigate my family system in the various ways that were needed.
Yep.
But sometimes that would leave Amy exposed because she grew up in a different type of family system.
Yeah.
And so it was the idea of, I don't go home with my extended family, I go home with Amy. So how do I stay unified and connected with her? Because that's the most important relationship in that dynamic. As we know, like prioritizing our relationship, it's God first, marriage second, and then everything comes underneath that. And it doesn't mean family isn't important, doesn't mean we have postures of honoring and respecting and sometimes accommodating that when you're in this family dynamic, we just adjust because that's what's important to that family, those members or others like that, mom and dad or aunt and uncle when we're in their setting.
Yeah.
But sometimes we still have to know how are we unified, stay connected, interact with each other in healthy ways.
Yeah, I think something that's really popping out to me now is it all boils down to expectations. So what expectations did you maybe come into the marriage with? The traditions you came in with your family, you've now created your new family, and that should be the first priority, like you said. And so you can do such easy things like, okay, list out your traditions, the things that are important to you, and then you guys create almost that we definition of what the holidays looks like and what's going to be good for our family, our children, and then how can we bring the extended family into this?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so I think it's important because that's where communication
Huge.
becomes super important. That's where that communication is also with, your parents or your siblings or, again, that extended family, because everyone has expectations of how that time may look. And so we've got to, understand, like, where do we give and take, what's worth fighting for, what's worth letting go of, because, we're here for just a short time, maybe that day of Thanksgiving or Christmas, or sometimes you're spending the whole time. And, again, there's all sorts of family dynamics. Some it's great because, you can hang out the whole time and everyone's just best friends. And then others, that tension can come in at some point that you're just navigating. And it's not exposing like what's right or wrong. It's just, we know our capacity, we know other people's capacity, and and we honor and respect that and make sure that we're unified in those situations. Because again, one of the things as a tool that might be helpful is Amy and I would game plan going into certain family dynamics so that Amy and I feel supported. Like if I'm in her family situation and she's in mine, it's just different. Like Amy's family is very relational, mine is probably more activity-based and shoulder to shoulder. So I have so much capacity for relational interaction. And then I need to go do something with my life. But if I don't communicate with Amy, all of a sudden she's like, where did Brandon go? Like, and I'm over there like, see you in 3 hours. And, so it's not right or wrong, but Amy needs to understand that. But if we don't talk about it, we're just more reacting to those situations versus communicating through them. So again, like Amy and I would have a plan going into the time, hopefully work that plan to some level, and then we would debrief after the time to say, how did that time go? Is there anything we need to change or adjust the next time we're in this family situation or dynamic? So,
we call that being proactive in our life. And we just find that it's way better than being reactive, or worse yet, I'm sure everybody's experienced some of this, where you have a radioactive Christmas because something happens, you get triggered, you get tripped up, you feel left out, you feel not connected to your spouse. One of the things that works great for Kenny and I and my family is we have a code word. We decide that code word before and describe to each other, what is that code word gonna mean? And is it an exit code word? Is it I need a prayer in the bathroom, let's go, Holy Spirit up, or whatever it is, we create a code word. So you're not being disrespectful to anybody else out there, you're on the same page. Sometimes we've gone to family events in separate cars, because Kenny's an introvert and he shuts down about 6 or 7 o'clock at night. And we've already talked
And
about.
you're still partying.
And I'm ready to party till. No, just kidding. But anyway, I am. So like, it's like, do you mind if we take separate cars? So when you're ready to go home, you can, and I don't take it personal that he wants to leave. Whatever it is, we're being really thoughtful beforehand. And again, we're taking our marriage into consideration, not leaving out our parents or our family. But again, the sanity needs to start here.
Yeah, and I think in that, a tool that I have found very successful is, I call it heads-up communication.
Yeah.
Like, how do I give Amy a heads up, or how do I give my family a heads up of like, hey, just to let you know, if I'm quiet or shut down or whatever, this is what's going on, versus leaving people to guess.
Yeah.
Now, again, we have to be careful. We can't over-communicate everything. There are limits to just that healthy communication, because some of us are huge on communication, and others, we communicate in first inning and ninth inning information. And then you get to guess all the innings in between.
Yeah.
So any tools that you would say are helpful besides the code word or a look or something of that nature that's just helpful?
I think it's just, again, making sure you know how to communicate on a heart level. And you said something, you're not taking it personal when your spouse is sharing. And we all know that you might have the best plan laid out for the evening of, and it can go sideways still. So what is the, what's the get up and go bag plan? And I would just say learning not to take your spouse's need to leave or to want to stay as a personal attack on you. And that's a huge thing, right? Learning not to take it personal.
Because you're different people.
Absolutely.
And so I can't make Amy be me.
Nope.
And Amy can't, make me be her.
Well, you can. I just don't think it goes very well.
Right. we try real hard sometimes, right?
We do,
Yeah,
yes.
if you just thought the way I did, and
If you know what I would need,
and act the
yes.
way I do,
Yeah.
everything would be great.
Be okay.
Yeah, but you don't want someone just like you.
Yeah.
Remember, the differences bring balance when you use those well.
Yeah.
So that's, we've talked about this idea of communicating maybe expectations or hopes and desire. I personally like the word hope and desire
I do too.
versus expectation.
Yeah.
Because expectation tends to be more of a demand, where hope and desire is like, I'm communicating what's important to me here, and hopefully you hear my heart in that. And remember, in that mindset, I'm thinking about what can I give to my spouse. In that, not so much only what I'm getting.
Yeah.
So even having that mindset of like, man, I really hear that's important to Amy. I'd love to give that to her.
Yeah.
Because I can see that helps her be successful as a person.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes the things we fight for, it's like, do I really need to fight for that? Like, and live and die?
Well, and I think that kind of goes to maybe to look at yourself and ask God to really show you if you get triggered during the holiday, if you are always having the same struggles year after year, is there some self-work that you need to do going into this holiday season that you're not repeating the same craziness over and over? So God might be pointing out to you that there's something going on in you, and it really has nothing to do with your spouse or their family. And so if you find yourself every holiday, the same thing keeps coming up over and over, I really encourage people to seek help.
Yeah.
There's tons of help out there. We love to help you here at XO Marriage too.
Because a third party is neutral,
Yeah.
and their goal should be to help you get to a win-win.
Yeah.
But sometimes it takes a while to get there.
Yeah.
So, and that's just in the final conclusion as we wrap up this part of this Lunch and Learn. It's just the idea of healthy boundaries.
100%.
Typically, we tend to throw out boundaries in reactive ways, not in intentional, thoughtful ways.
Yeah.
Like, stop doing that.
Yeah.
That's driving me crazy. I've shared that 100 times. Like, that's not going to go anywhere.
No.
Versus, man, I thought through this. I want to honor you in this, but this is a really important boundary for me, and this would help me feel protected in these situations or family dynamic.
Well, I think
So-
what's important there is please don't try to set boundaries either 5 seconds in the car
in
when
the midst of,
in the midst of the turkey dinner or on your way, because that might bring some stuff up. Try to be.
And all of a sudden you're in an argument now.
Exactly. And so boundaries tend to, then you go into defensive mode and you want to protect yourself. So really being proactive weeks before. And I like to say that probably the holidays and the way things happen in your family is really no surprise to you.
But why do we act and shocked and surprised every time it
every
happens?
time, right?
I didn't know they were going to act that way.
I had no idea.
Shocking.
Shocking. So if you know it's probably going to go down the same path, please start now. Right now is a great time to start talking about that. And Brandon, you always talk about couch time. A time when you can talk outside of conflict. So don't wait till you're already in the middle of disconnection. Make it a positive step so you're thinking in a great manner towards your spouse and their heart, what you can give, what you can ask for in a calm, collected manner.
And sometimes it's just, recognizing too in that boundary, again, this idea of like, I know we're just there for a few days.
Yeah.
So the world's not going to come to an end. I know this is important to my spouse, so I'd love to give this to you. But you can still share. Like, I struggle with that.
Yeah.
But I'm also working on recognizing I don't want to make this all about me and what I'm not getting during this time.
Yeah.
So healthy communication, boundaries where that's appropriate, but do it in an intentional way with those that are important to you.
No,
so that and do it, I've said this again, you probably heard me say this, like do it looking through the front windshield of your relationship, not looking through the rear view mirror of all your shoulda, woulda, couldas.
Yeah.
Let's not bring the past into the present as much as we can. So in that, now we want to sort of focus on specifically this area of finances, because that can be a big topic in the arena of, Thanksgiving and presents and what do we spend, and some of you are huge givers and this is your time to just explode and giving and loving on people, and that's your love language, and others it pulls out the like, hey, let's have some boundaries and let's love well, but within $50, just something like that. And so what we want to do is bring in a financial expert and strategist. His name is Damon Hurst. And so Damon, thank you for being here. And we're going to, again, get into this idea of finances. And studies show that finances can be one of the greatest challenges within a marital relationship because of maybe different thoughts and ideas about how that looks and, what's important and not important. Again, different money languages come into that. So I know you work specifically in that arena with individuals and couples. So I want you just to share a little bit about yourself and what your heart and passion is before we sort of dive into some questions we want to ask you.
Yeah, well, thank you. And thank you for having me today as well, too. As we've talked in the past, this is a true passion of mine because so many families get torn apart from finances. It's one of the top reasons why people get divorced. So this is a personal passion for me, is to just take, the experience that I have, from professionally and be able to bring into light. And so, a little bit about me. So I've been in the financial industry for 15 years.
Okay.
And so
you're a professional?
I hope so.
You may know, he may know what he's talking about.
Right.
Hopefully so. Yeah, by now. So I am a certified wealth strategist. And so, so like I said, individuals and families are a lot of my focus. And so over my 15-year career, as you can imagine, we've had a lot of therapy sessions in the office at times because, finance is such a very personal and intimate topic that people really open up. So you get to learn a lot about people, but then also a lot about their background as well, too, because there's a relationship to how we grew up and also how that comes into our finances as adults. And so this is, I think, an on-time topic and conversation today. But personally, I'm a husband. First off, and so my wife and I have been married for 10 years.
Okay.
And we have my wife, Sarah, who's actually here today as well, too. We have 4 amazing daughters. Wow. So I am a girl dad through and through.
Slightly.
Yeah, slightly. And there may or may not be conversations about bringing a dog into the equation.
A female dog.
I'm going to have to put my foot down somewhere. So if that dog comes in, it's going to have to be a male dog.
You need support.
We need support. I need support in the house.
Right.
But no, we have a lot of fun. And so if we like to be, you'll find me at, someone's baseball or softball fields or at a volleyball court if I'm not working. And so we have a good time as a family. But yeah, a lot of today's conversation will not just be professional, but also just some personal things that we've enacted as a family as well.
Yeah, well, awesome. And so let me just ask this, and Heidi and I will tag team sort of asking questions, and you might share some things that piggybacks asking, something off of what you share. What is the dynamic you find most often, and relate it as much as you can to the holidays? What are dynamics you find that just in the financial arena that you're often navigating with someone or with a married couple or a family? What are those just bigger picture dynamics?
Yeah, I would say the first thing is really misaligned expectations. Because a lot of times we come into the holidays with our traditions or things we saw growing up, or maybe our idea of how we want to express love. And so, what happens is when you talked about it earlier, it's not that you or I dynamic any longer, it's the we concept. And so how do we start to figure out what makes sense for our family going into the current season that we're in. So I would say a lot of conflict a lot of times comes to how we expect, right? Because you may have that person that says, hey, it's only money. We can't take it with us, and have that kind of mentality.
Sure.
Where you have the other person,
which is true,
which is true, right?
isn't an excuse necessarily to, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're combating that with the person who's more of the saver, who's looking to the future, and maybe they grew up in a situation where their lights were off at one point in their family, right? So they're looking at money as safety, and so when you're balancing those two dynamics, and if there hasn't been conversation around that, it can create conflict. So I think the expectations is one. Also, a lot of what I see as well, too, is when you have a dynamic where you have a primary breadwinner who is a provider for a family, and they focus on the providing so much, and sometimes they're not present throughout the whole year. So a lot of times the holidays may be an opportunity to make that up in a form of presence, because my presence has not been here throughout the year. And so that can create a situation where there could be some potential conflict there, because I'm compensating for not being present. I'm going to make it up with gifts.
Yeah.
And so even though there may be joy and excitement over the gift, I think what we're truly after are those moments and memories that we're creating as a family. So I think that could be an interesting dynamic where there can be some potential conflict as well, too. The last one, just because we live in a world of social media, is just a comparison. People are putting what I call their highlight reels, what they want us to see. I'll put it that way. And so a lot of times, now our measure has changed on what we see as what a true great holiday experience is, because of what we're seeing online. And so I think tempering those expectations and that pressure to feel like we have to live up to something that maybe doesn't align with our values can also be a potential conflict as well, too.
Yeah, and that, in those, I think then you sort of get a little bit more granular to say, how do you align financial expectations? What I've often found with couples is a lot of us are aligned on maybe the big picture. So I could say Amy and I, of course we want godly kids.
All right.
That love the Lord and walk with Him, but then how we get there, we can go in very different directions. And so same thing maybe financially. Well, of course we want to be good stewards of finances, and of course we don't want to find ourselves in significant debt in the holidays, but then for some reason we diverge and go in different directions, because how we see that unfolding looks very different to one person versus another.
Absolutely.
So how do you navigate sort of those expectations?
Yeah, I think that's an important point. I think the first question is us deciding as a couple what matters to us most in this season. Because we already talked about different seasons of life. I know, Heidi, you mentioned earlier being an empty nester. We're in the thick of it right now.
Yes, you are.
So the things that matter most to us in this season are going to differ than maybe it will 5 or 10 years down the road.
So the principles wouldn't change, but maybe how those principles are carried out.
And how we see it. So 'cause we may both want the same thing. Hey, we want this to be an awesome, amazing holiday season for our kids and our family. To your point, though, we may see that differently. And so if we aren't bringing those conversations to light, and also respecting the other person, our spouse, and saying, okay, here's what I see, here's what you see. How do we make that a we experience, so that way, and there may be some give and take there, right? And there may be some understanding there as well, too. But what matters to us most in this season? So even when you go to the financial aspect, and I think that's the conversation first. Let me make sure I point that out. Once we have that conversation, then we tie dollar amounts to it. Where a lot of times we don't have the conversation and we just tie dollar amounts to it.
Sure.
And then since we have maybe some resentment there, because you have one spouse that's maybe doing the spending, and the other is slowly tallying the receipts up in their mind and saying, man, how much is this going to cost? How far is this going to set us back? And so if that communication hasn't happened on the front end, you can easily get into the situations where you may have those eternal conflicts that may not come up until later, and a spouse explodes, and we're like, well, where did that come from? Yeah. Well, it's because we didn't have the conversations on the front end.
Yeah. Do you find, and I'll let you go in a second. Just provoke so much questions.
We get excited about this. So.
Do you find in those moments spouses are labeling each other when it gets tense, like you're just a miser, or you're
being just like your mother.
Yeah, or
something.
Ooh, those little subtle jabs. It can get a little feisty in the room at times. Yeah. It really can. And I think for good reason, right? Because I think maybe we don't acknowledge it enough, but there's so much emotion that's tied to our relationship with money. and they harbor feelings, they harbor experiences maybe that we saw growing up, whether it be with our parents and how they handled money, whether it be in fights that we saw in the home that were related to money and the stressor that it impacts. And I think, again, to what you were saying earlier, we all want the same thing, the end result, right? But when you get to the point to where now you feel attacked, and I think that happens a lot of times too, is they feel attacked because of their decisions and the decisions that they're making. And so, and I think XO does a great job of teaching some communication tips that may help with that. And it doesn't matter what the topic is. They also help with the finance topic as well, too. So I think having those healthy conversations, being able to respect, even if you don't always agree, but being able to respect where the other person is coming from, because your spouse is significant, right? Yeah. And they have opinions and they have thoughts that matter. And so I think taking that into consideration and just finding a path where you both can agree and align is where, hopefully you'll find the most peace.
Yeah.
So one of the things I want to jump in with, and I find this very fascinating because when Kenny and I finally got our finances in check, we used to treat Christmas or the unemployment season for us, because we come from a contractor background, as oh my gosh, we're super surprised that Christmas showed up again. And we don't have it budgeted in, so it's almost treated like an emergency.
Like, wait, where did that come from?
Where did Christmas come from?
Yeah,
so,
I didn't know we had Thanksgiving this year.
Exactly, why did holidays roll around? And so maybe you can speak on to like what you see, and then maybe debt that's incurred during the holidays because of that kind of mentality.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
lack of planning mentality?
Yeah, because I think it kind of goes, you talk about planning those conversations, so we probably shouldn't have that conversation December 23rd?
Probably not.
Okay.
By that point, it's too late.
That's right.
And I think in a perfect world, and we're here in November. So we're, just a couple weeks away from Black Friday. So just to set context here, but yes, if we can prepare in advance, that's always the best strategy, to do that, right? Is if we could, because you're right. At least on my calendar, it comes around the same time every year.
Surprise!
So, but it seems like the holidays come so quickly. And I think I have all the times, we'll talk about with clients, they're like, we don't know where the year went. And so just as much as we can prepare and plan, we're not surprised when the end of the year comes, and so some of the things that we've talked about before, some strategies that can help is, throughout the year, just like when you're setting your spending plan for the year, you would set aside, some funds for holiday spending for the end of the year to come. So a little bit, and you and your spouse figure out what amount makes sense. It could be $100, $200, whatever case may be. But then when you get to the end of the year, you have that fund that's already reserved. And so you're financing your own Christmas, not the credit card companies.
Yeah.
Because theirs come with interest. Yeah. And so as much as we can prepare and put a plan in place and have those conversations early, then we're not blindsided from the eventual holidays, because as the year goes on, the difference in holiday time is there's just more opportunities to spend. And the marketers have gotten so creative, and they've made it easier for us to spend as well, too.
Well, and it starts in July.
Yeah.
Or June, the marketing.
Yeah. Exactly.
Especially in Branson where I live, like Christmas is showing up in the stores in September.
Yeah.
So
they're planting the seeds earlier and earlier, and they do it with the kids, too, right? They'll put on the shelves, they'll have it, kid level, around Halloween time, right? They're like, hey, Christmas is coming around the corner, right? And so, but yeah, to your point, just creating that plan and doing it early in advance if you can is always the best idea. Because then once you get to the end of the year, the time that we know is going to come every single year, we don't feel blindsided. And also it doesn't derail us from our other goals as well, too. We're focusing on holidays here. Yeah. There are other goals that we have as well, too. And so having that plan and preparing for that plan in advance will really help us down the road when it gets to this time of year.
Yeah. So what other tools do you think are important for couples to talk about around this kind of family dynamic and holidays, financially speaking?
Yeah, I would say one of the first things is having check-ins. And I say that to say is because a lot of times we'll see a dynamic where you have one spouse is really more in tune with the finances, and one that maybe isn't as in tune, but it's like, hey, I know that that's our finance person, so, I just kind of roll with it.
The CFO of the family.
The CFO of the family. And it's great because those things are important. You want to have someone who takes the lead, but we also want to have communication. And so, a lot of times just those quick check-ins, and it can be 15 or 20 minutes. Sure. I would say around this time, we may need to do a little more consistently. So at least weekly, maybe as we go. And really the check-in can be, okay, here's what happened last week. Here's what's coming ahead this week. Are there things we need to adjust? Here are some things that we didn't expect. Here are some things that we want to prepare for. And we're just kind of checking in with one another. And I think as you do that more consistently, it gets easier to have those conversations, and no one's blindsided because we're both checking in and we know what's going on. So those weekly check-ins is something, especially around holiday times, which is really good. I would say as the year goes on and you get back to the end of the year, maybe you scale that back. Maybe it's every other week, maybe it's once a month, whatever the cadence that makes sense for you. But there needs to be a regular cadence. I think that's the biggest thing, is have those check-ins. Another thing that you could also do, especially this time of year, is you have your buckets on how you make your decisions. So you have a yes bucket, you have a no bucket, and you have a later bucket.
I love that.
So the yes bucket means that, hey, we are aligned that this goes according to our plan and what's a priority for us in this season. That's a go. Let's go ahead with it, right? No guilt, no stress. We're making that decision. Your no bucket tends to be one that, hey, you know what, this season, this is really not a priority for us. Maybe we should, take that back to maybe next year or something. Or maybe you said one spouse is a go, one spouse is a no, so we're misaligned.
Yeah.
And so what you may end up doing is putting that into the later bucket where, hey, let's table the conversation. Let's check back.
We're not in alignment.
We're not in alignment. Let's revisit in about 48 hours and see if it's still something that we should talk about. A lot of times what you'll find is once it gets to the later bucket, it ends up disappearing. Or maybe the decision at the time was tied to some type of an emotional trigger. Now we go back to marketing, okay? So marketing a lot of times creates urgency in us to make a decision now.
To get that deal.
To get the deal, right? And
Our kids do that. They'll see that online and be like, I've got to buy it right now.
It's on sale.
We'll coach them like, it'll probably,
It'll
be
probably
at the
still
same price.
be there, yeah. And marketers know that, and they create that urgency, right? The Black Friday shopping, the deals and everything. I mean, you have to keep it in perspective. Did we really need another 75-inch TV in our house?
Yeah.
Maybe, it's $200, $250. Okay,
But you're still spending $250.
But you're still spending
Right.
money. And so you got to think, too, is those start to add up. Because if it happens one time, it's probably going to happen with something else. And so, having that misalignment can be a trigger that maybe we need to table that for later. Or what's really drawing this decision right now? Is it the urgency that's being created by marketing? Is it something that really we need to revisit? So I think, when you go into that later category, we'll find that a lot of purchases or decisions tend to go there. But then after a couple of days, it wears off and you go about your business. But I think, as we categorize things, put into those different buckets, can make it a little bit easier to make those decisions and figure out if this is a priority or not for us.
And so,
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah.
No.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'll go. So just making this practical. So Amy, my wife, she's very frugal and wise. She's more of a probably forward thinker with money. She also loves generously, though, in those situations. And so I'll be the one that I'm probably more conservative with money in those moments where, there can be differences between, do we create experiences for our kids or, each kid gets this amount. And so it just, sometimes I will believe I'm the bad guy. She doesn't make me feel like the bad guy, but I'm the one that's like, sorry, you don't get to love as generously as you would like because, we're here. And you always have the best intentions, like to save and build towards, but then life happens and, it's like, oh goodness, we had talked about having, let's say, $1,000 for Christmas presents this year, and by the time you get there, it's like, and now we're down to $400 because life has happened, and that's discouraging possibly to her. Again, be more forward thinker and thinking more that way versus I'm more in the moment, and it's just sort of taking snapshots as we go along, and so anyway, how do you work through a dynamic like that, where I know that can go into relationship disconnect because I'm hearing, she's not saying this again. This is what I hear in my head or tell myself.
He's asking for a friend.
A joy killer.
Okay. Yeah. Hypothetically.
I'm a joy killer, and I'm just, killing Amy's joy to be able to bless and serve, and I want that for her. But then that tension exists, in the financial arena. So any thoughts on how you navigate that, or, even inflation's getting,
Oh gosh.
if cost of living and inflation, all of these dynamics that, are taking place.
Yeah, it's tough right now, especially when you mention inflation as well, too. Just the cost of things, it costs more to live these days. But you bring up an interesting dynamic, because sometimes I feel like I'm the joy killer at times in our family. And thankfully for my wife, because if it wasn't for my wife, we wouldn't have any fun. I mean,
Same here. I am so blessed that Amy sees and tries to grab those opportunities.
Absolutely. So it's not that it's right or wrong. I think there's definitely merit in both. Yeah. But it's how we blend that together. So a lot of times it may mean that we have a cap that we put in a certain category. So we may say, hey, okay, we know that we want to bless, you want to give generously, and that's okay, and we believe to do that. But we also want to make sure that, it's in line with our goals and for the future as well, too. But I don't want to stop that, because you don't want to kill that spirit. So a lot of times we may say, hey, here's our allowable pot that we've decided and agreed on, and we're going to run within that. So that way, whatever that pot is, we now have freedom. Yeah. We don't feel like we have control or we have restraints. It's like, no, within this space, you go for it. Whatever you want to do, whoever you want to bless, that is for you, right? And so, we find that when those type of dynamics are in place, it makes it a little easier, because one spouse feels like, okay, now I actually do have a little bit of freedom. I don't have to keep checking in. I don't have to keep asking for permission. It's like, no, that's already been granted. Because at the end of the day, this is our life, this is our money together. But at the same time, it's not taking us too far off and derailing us to where, we're feeling like that our future goals won't get hit because of stuff that's happening in the present.
And this is where I think personalities and dynamics, because as you were sharing that, I'm like, again, that's a great idea, but I'm still going to try. Even let's say we agreed on 1,000, but just reality has happened, and we planned for that, but now something. Well, my personality is accommodating, is a people pleaser, so we're still going to do 1,000 because I don't want Amy to be disappointed, and I don't want her to look at me as a disappointment. And so now even the personality dynamic kicks into play of just trying to accommodate. Yeah. Like, it's no longer objective.
Right.
It's like, no, we said 1,000, I'll just figure it out. But then I'm frustrated the whole time, and then my personality becomes passive or passive aggressive, in that interaction. But at the same time, it's the tension of, but I want Amy to be okay with me. And, we had talked about that. And so see how it gets a little bit messy, and it's not strictly objective.
So I'm curious. I'm actually going to throw it back to you now, because I think that's some communication training right there as well too. So whether it's finance or anything else, so how would you advise for couples to help navigate those where you have one couple that's like, hey, I want my spouse to be happy, I'm going to accommodate, but I still feel something
and the other's
inside.
Like, no,
Yeah. So how would you, how would you
Heidi,
advise?
how would you do that?
Well, it's funny because we just had a couple that did the same thing. They had a bonus check come in, and they both, let's just pretend it was $500 each, right? And they agreed that they were each going to get an allowance of $500, same thing in their bucket to do it with other. But then when the husband went and spent it on the whatever, she was like, yeah, but we have all this debt. It would have been great if you chose to use that to pay off the debt. So again, it goes back to communication.
And he was like, but this is fun money.
But this
it's
is
like
fun
bonus.
money. Exactly, it was bonus. So they both had different understandings of what that fun money or play money or bonus money meant. So I think it's super important when you have that bucket, say, okay, we have this allowance for each of us to do that. What does that even mean to you? And if I say I went and bought a $500 tool, are you really going to be okay with that? You know what I mean? So I think communication is huge. And so,
or sometimes we agree to something, but then we pull it back the next day.
And I think that's...
Or then we get ticked off.
Yes.
Do whatever you want. But you didn't spend it on the debt, and that's where you should have spent it.
And I think that can come with compromise. When our heart really isn't in and there's not a true win-win for that decision, you're just trying to either be passive or you don't want someone to be upset. I think it's okay for people, when they make a decision in a relationship, it's not the 10 Commandments carved in stone. There's flexibility to say, let's try it for 2 weeks. And if it's not working and one of us, it's not sitting right, please open that communication and negotiation again. And don't take it personal if your spouse says, this, I know I agreed to this, but something's not sitting right. And so it's okay to come up with a plan and agree on it, but then you can also change that as long as communication's happening. Yeah. So I think it's making a safe space for your spouse to be able to say, I'm going to share my heart with you, and you're not going to throw it on the floor.
Yeah, or crush it. We're always holding our spouse's heart, whether we realize it or not. We're either going to crush it or hold it gently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so going back to just sort of some holiday tips and
yes.
finances. We talked about, the buckets of yes, no, maybe later, and this could be related to, presents we get. This could just be related to, meals, like how much do you spend at meals? And I mean, I'm constantly calculating like, okay, if like, let's not invite any more people because that means
Another
that
$42 a
right,
plate.
and that's where my brain goes,
Right.
which sounds horrible because I want people to enjoy, and I have to mentally reframe things sometimes to keep, like I could probably struggle more with. Jimmy Evans says something like a poverty spirit or an orphan spirit. Just there's never enough, and and how do I switch that because that's even a mental shift. But what are just like even more tools you could put in their financial tool belt as we're just looking at the holidays?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the things we haven't yet talked about is also transparency. And so when you talk about transparency, even with the allowance bucket, right? You have one spot, hey, we're dividing, what's going to go in my bucket, what's going to go in your bucket, spend freely. But also just having transparency on what's taking place as far, because I mean, there's a ton of apps now where you can sync your bank accounts, you can sync your credit cards, even investments, right? And so making sure that each spouse has transparency and can see what's going on, whether they're the one that's taking the lead on it or not, because that can alleviate a lot of pressure as well too, right? Because a lot of times, again, I'll bring it up, the dynamic I see a lot of times is you have one that's more in tune with what's going on financially. You may have the other one that's more in tune with what's going on with the spending. But not only the spending, but what they see as a priority with the spending. Because a lot of times there may be fights because they say, hey, well, I don't think that that's the priority right now. Going back to the debt conversation, I think we should be putting the money here as opposed to there, right? So having that transparency on where we're going with our dollars, what that looks like, can also be something that can alleviate potential fights. So we're talking about being proactive. And then also coming back to those weekly or bi-weekly check-ins, whatever the cadence that you set up. And going back to actually what Heidi said earlier, because there are going to be times where we set a plan, we may get off that plan, or we may have to make adjustments. So just knowing that it's not a, hey, we're going to iron this out in one session, and this is going to be what it's going to be going forward. Just understanding and giving room for grace, I would say, is something that's important. And then understand we may have to make adjustments. We may have to change some things. The plan that we thought originally was going to work may not really be the plan. Or it's like, hey, you know what? Here's how I feel about that. I felt that this is a little more restrictive than I want it to be. Is there a way that we can open this up a bit more? And so just being able to have that healthy communication, that's where I think those check-ins really help out, because you're bringing that to the table within hopefully a safe space. Yeah. And you can find out as a couple, how do we continue to kind of adjust this until we find the thing that works for us?
Yeah. And so, in that, I'm just thinking of like, what are holiday financial principles? Because how you work out, again, principles, looks different depending on, just the marriage dynamics, the family dynamics. But I'm thinking principally like, okay, stewardship. In Scripture, we steward things, we don't own things.
Sure.
Right? According to how God sees finances, that this is a blessing or a stewarding of what I've given you. So like, what are financial principles that you would say, like, here might be some good principles that, if this starts to create stress, if it's robbing you of your joy or whatever does that make sense? Just, what are some financial, principles for the holidays that might be helpful to think on?
I think the overarching is don't spend more than you have. I think that's the number one principle, stand within your means. Don't overspend, right? And I think, but the front end of that is having a plan. And I think that's what we've been talking about before, is having a plan. Here's what we're designating, whether you've created that plan in January or we're like, hey, here's where we are at this stage, and this is going to be where we're going to stay within. Going back to the adjustments, sometimes things happen, right? So I think having a plan is a good principle. Also, we're talking a lot about money, but also just thinking where we spend our time as well too is important, because there's ways that you can create memories and moments that don't have to do with money. And so it may be serving can be something that we're dedicating our time or spending time, volunteering, helping others, right? Maybe using our talents to be able to bless someone else. So yes, this is a money conversation. Money principles are don't spend more than you have and create a plan and all that. Those are the practical, like tactical things. Sure. But then also, going back to really what matters most. Are we creating moments? Are we creating memories as a family? And then also sticking to the budget that we are spending plan that we allot for ourselves as well, to having those check-ins. I mean, I think those things all tie together.
Yeah.
It's having that consistent communication, having a plan, not spinning over, and also not having judgment if we do. And that's another thing too. So like as we talk about going beyond the holidays, we get back to January, one of the things, playing, sports in college, we used to always watch film after the games. And so that gave us an opportunity to see, hey, what went well? Where can we make adjustments? Where can we do something different next time, but do it without judgment. So even if you
So it's not good to say, like, you're the one that overspent, so you're the one that gets to get an extra job.
Let's not do that.
Off.
Yeah,
like,
let's not do that. Yeah,
okay.
no shame, no judgment. Let's
Just
not
want
do
to make
that.
sure I'm tracking with
Are you
you.
still asking for a friend?
Yeah.
But just knowing it's okay, and we'll work with what we. So again, as we go into the conversation, I know we're coming to a close here shortly. Just knowing that even as we talk about these plans, we may have the best plan possible. Things happen, and so just knowing that we're not reserving judgment. We'll regroup, we'll figure out where we can get better, and then we'll be okay.
Yeah, and then I think entering into the new year, so that if you don't like the way maybe financially things went during the holidays, what's an opportunity to have those conversations so that as we enter into the next year, we're not having it, we're not reacting through the holidays, we're not having this conversation in mid-November. I'm going to say it's better that you're having a conversation if you are doing it now versus avoiding.
Right.
But just like, hey, how do you think, like you said, that time went? What would you have done differently? What's something as we think forward into 26?
Some more long-term goals.
Yeah, long-term goals and strategies that we can implement.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's always best if we can to be proactive, right? But, at this point in time, we'll work with what we have. But to your point, as we get around to January, that'll give us an opportunity to be proactive and start to set the stage going into the next year. Because like we said before, it comes around the same time every year. There's no surprise there.
So do birthdays.
Everything else.
All these other
Unfortunately.
things. That's right. We don't like those.
We don't like those anymore.
So let's just transition to see if there's any questions that
perfect,
anyone has right now. And if you do have a question, you're welcome to, ask that, and we would be glad to answer that. What are some maybe general questions that just like frequently asked questions that we could go ahead and discuss or answer? Like, what are frequently asked questions you get at this time? That maybe could answer.
Yeah, I would say, and I think we've addressed it too, is, we have one spouse who's more the saver, one that's a spender. How do we bring those dynamics together? And so I think that's something we've talked about before as well too, is there's nothing right or wrong about any of those. They both are right in the right context. And so how do we create that shared version of what we want? And even if it means that, hey, we set a certain allotted amount. Actually, it's funny, we were joking about this yesterday, my wife and I. So my wife and I have a certain number that we said, hey, anything this number or below, we're good. Anything above that number, we'll revisit. And so she actually called me from the store yesterday. She was getting ready for her holiday shopping and said, hey, babe, here's the store. Here's what it is. Are we good? And I was like, well, has it hit our number? Is it below our number? She's like, yes. And she's like, for today. I'm like, all right.
This is not cumulative.
It's not cumulative total. This is for today. So I'm like, well, if it's for today, we're good. But let's maybe talk about it and revisit and see what else is down the road and see if we can create a larger plan for it. And so I would say that's the thing, is that we're coming from different backgrounds, different experiences, and so just bringing those together, respecting each other's thoughts and their beliefs and where we come from, and creating our vision together.
So what would be, I think often like short-term strategies to deal with the here and now, and even getting to, if one's covering the finances or in charge of it for whatever reason, but both are making money, and so sometimes it can be seen as my money versus your money, so I'm going to go spend what I want to for Christmas, and that to me is a little bit of a lack of being aligned in partnership, because everything should be done as a we in agreement. It's not mine versus yours, it's ours mindset. But just, I think of, how do you differentiate between like, okay, we're dealing with this right now, we've got to figure out a number, versus like, it's a great idea to talk long-term strategy, but we're just trying to survive financially through the holidays. So I know we talked about communication, but are there specific things that you can say if you're struggling with this right now, ask yourself these questions, or something that just sort of prompts myself thinking through this, not reacting through it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's no hard number, right? I mean, I think it's what's unique for each family. I think for some things, if you have people who are in a situation right now where maybe they haven't allotted a certain amount for finances for the holidays, then maybe that's where creativity comes in. Because again, we're talking about the money conversation. And I'll give an example. So, one of the things we did one Christmas for one of our daughters is we created a scavenger hunt. And so she had a gift, but we actually created, my wife did. She's a creative one.
That's right.
Where she had little notes that were hidden throughout the house that went to another clue, that went to another clue. And I remember we actually will go back to this day when it comes back a year later on our videos, and we'll look at that experience and see the joy on her face as she was going through navigating the house and got to the gift. I can't tell you what the gift was, right? I mean, all these years later. But what we do is we have that experience, right? So sometimes it may take creativity if the funds are low, right? To be able to
create
still
more of the experience versus making it about the gift.
And then you don't, because what'll happen is if it is about the gift, and you then get to a situation where you're spending money that's not there, then you have the pressure in January having to confront that.
Yeah.
And so sometimes just reality, and sometimes you may be in that season where it's tough right now. Maybe life happened, and there are some things that you didn't anticipate happening, and that funds are a little low. So I think creativity can come into play to be able to still have the experiences in the moments, but not have the pressure that comes with overspending during holiday time.
Well, I think we have a question, so Macy is going to chime in real quick.
You mentioned apps that help organize finances. Do you have favorite apps for that?
Yeah, so we've used a few. The one that and I'm not endorsing, by the way, let me say that. We use Monarch right now. The reason why we like it is because we can actually pull together not only our credit cards, our bank accounts, but our investments as well too. So we actually get an overall snapshot of how all of our finances are working together, which is something that's really helpful. There are other, great apps that are out there as well too. You need a budget. I think it's YNAB. You need a budget is one that we also looked at as well too. In the past, we used to use Mint, but I think Mint did away with some of their features. But we really like the Monarch app right now.
I'm trying to think. I have on my phone, Amy and I share, and I just can't remember, but because that happens with my brain sometimes. But like we just use one that it constantly syncs up. So Good Budget is our app.
Okay.
And so that's a good app if that's helpful, because if Amy goes and fills up with gas and she immediately enters it, it immediately updates on my end as well.
So on the budget line, you see
Right.
how
Now,
much
that's
is-
not to control your spouse.
Yeah.
I can see where apps are used. I just saw that you spent
It's like in real time.
and I
Yeah.
told you yesterday. Yeah.
Exactly.
We don't have the money.
Yeah, we don't
Hey,
have
one
that.
question I have, Damon, that I'm thinking about is, what are some misconceptions maybe that couples can have about working with a financial advisor? Like maybe they think it's too expensive, or I don't need one, or what role would that play?
That's only this certain people use.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say, I think there's a lot. I think, costs and fees are always, and I don't know if it's per se the cost or fees, but maybe the value. Because I think a lot of, just with, and I've heard people who are now using ChatGPT as their financial advisor to recommend strategies for them, recommend how to help them make decisions with money. And so, I think that's a real thing right now. And I think it's more of a value conversation than it is just costs and fees.
Sure.
Here's where I think having an advisor or having help really helps, is that you have someone that has a human dynamic that can understand people dynamics. And that's something that I think is hard to AI, right? It's hard to really be able to ask the questions and have the conversations and be able to pose
Like
experiences.
it could give you facts, but it really can't address
Well, it
the...
doesn't understand your risk tolerance, your personal risk tolerance level.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's
Your
the
fears.
human element, right? And also having that experience of working with other families, individuals who are in similar situations, maybe if they're further down the road than you are, or maybe in the same season, and be able to lend some of that experience, what worked, what didn't work. So I think there's that human element as well too that I think is tough, where if we're talking about value, to me, I think that's where the value's coming in, because there's a lot of,
What do you value?
What do you value? Yeah.
Not just make it a money decision, but a value decision.
What do you? And I think people value having a thought partner. They value having someone to bounce, situations off of. What are your perspective on this? What do you think? Are there any blind spots that we're not considering, that maybe, other people have navigated through that you can give us insights on. So I think that's where the value can come in at.
So what I'm hearing you saying is, just like us, you're a money coach, and not a marriage coach. Yes.
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 All right.
To be continued.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Damon,
Thank
for
you so
coming
much.
on and giving your wisdom. I know there's a lot more in depth and detail we could go into, and here's this situation, walk that out, etc. But just to keep it at a higher level, hopefully that helped you guys, just whether it helped provoke, questions or thoughts for you. Again, so I know people say it's a lot of times people get divorced over what your issue is. I'm also going to argue that regardless of what your issue is, people get divorced or struggle because they don't know how to navigate through that issue.
Yeah.
So it's not so much what it is, it's the tools to know how to navigate and communicate and talk through that issue to get to the other side. And so, in that, we have opportunities at EXO, whether it's a resource through EXO Now, or it's just marriage services, a marriage coach coming alongside you to help you navigate and work through those issues through our marriage intensives. We want to be there to just help you guys in that journey and come alongside you. And so, we also have vision retreats that we're doing. And a lot of times, sometimes finances flounder or other areas because we don't have a vision for who we are as a couple and where we want to go.
Yeah.
And so even going through that workshop and course can help you guys align better in your vision, and then those certain topics that, as we're talking about finances, or as we're talking about parenting, or as we're talking about holidays, we align because this meets our vision of who we want to be, so that we bring that to the arenas of what we do. And so those are just different things that we can resource or help you guys with. We also just came out with a digital course, and you want to tell them a little bit about doing Marriage God's Way?
Yeah, so our founder, Jimmy Evans, is amazing, and we have a course now that you can purchase through the EXO Now app that you can use in your small group, you can use for your personal relationships, but it's really just laying that foundation that if we learn how to do marriage God's way, this will give us the tools to thrive in our marriage, not just, live day to day, but to thrive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are just, if you want to know more, go to info@exomarriage.com. You can go to exomarriage.com and just visit our website, and those are opportunities to sign up for different events. And yeah, so thank you guys so much for being a part of this conversation and dialogue. I hope it helped you guys just as you think about the holidays, and maybe some pointers that you can implement just immediately. And again, if there's bigger things, we'd love to be a partner with you and helping you navigate those. And so we're going to close out in prayer. And so Heidi, I'm putting you on the spot. Would you close us in prayer?
Amazing, of course.
All right.
Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this time where we could just lean into your truth and your understanding, because we know your ways are the best ways. So we just pray that this message is heard by the people who need to hear it. We pray that they allow the words that they've heard to just spark change if there needs to be change. It inspires them where they need to be inspired. And like always, Lord, we just pray that you're at the center of all of our holidays and all of our decisions. In your Son's precious name, amen.
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 Amen.